We are here because we know the outcomes in our lives are within our control. That taking absolute ownership of how we eat, sleep, train, think, and connect with each other is how we'll optimize our health and happiness. That chasing excellence is how we grab hold of what is possible. Our mission is to live on the run, always chasing, never stopping. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Chasing Excellence. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Patrick.
If this episode sounds different, it's because you and I are in the same room.
Woohoo!
We did this last month. We experimented with actually getting back together, and that obviously worked well. That was when we had Mark in the house.
COVID feel goods.
Yes. And so we're going to start getting back in person, which I'm excited about. Though I think that this might be the last time we're in this office because you're moving.
I'm moving.
So we're going to record just because why not tell people we record a couple episodes at a time. So the next couple of weeks we'll still be here, but then sometime next month when we record, we'll have some new digs.
All the books in the background for people that watch or might not be there.
Yeah, I know,
it'd be really
figure out how to replicate
shocking off for a lot of people.
All right. So excited about that. And I visited the new CompTrain offices and they're awesome. So congrats and kudos to you guys over there. This week, we're going to go to our 2-minute drill. 2-minute drill is when I go through Instagram, my DMs, and I collect all of the really good questions that listeners have. I put them together and we tend to get about 10 to 12 done every episode. Your challenge is to answer them within 2 minutes. Sometimes that means you talk real fast, and sometimes it means we abandon 2 minutes entirely. So we'll see. We'll see.
And sometimes it is just a 5-second answer.
That's
so
true.
We'll see what happens with this one.
All right, let's go. First question. I'm a recently separated veteran from the Navy. On my way out, I had every intention of coaching CrossFit full time. After going through a long and consuming depression, I left to travel the country for about 6 months. I've moved back and now I find myself afraid to get back into coaching. I have the positive feedback from the affiliate owners, members, and friends. I just lack the ability to give myself permission to be a coach when I myself may not be as fit or capable as I was before I left. I have taken a full-time job, but my schedule still allows me to coach during the week if I should choose. How would you advise someone to lead themselves out of that hole of self-doubt?
Okay, so specifically for this person, when they say I'm not as fit or capable as I once was, do you read that as like truly like fitness and capabilities, or is that like as fit to be a coach?
I think the former. I think it's like probably very fit while he was in the Navy, got out and is no longer as fit as he was. That was my take.
Okay, so let's go with that one. In a 2-minute drill, this could be a whole episode in itself. But in a 2-minute drill, here's the really short answer: you don't need to be fit to be a coach. Mm-hmm. ... Like you have to have some sort of level of trustworthiness. Yep. And if you're going to tell people to do the hard things, to say yes to the salads and no to the cookies, to be consistent with your training, and you're not yourself, that's hypocritical. Yep. So you need to be able to live the lifestyle, but you don't need to be able to outperform your athletes. I can't outperform any of the athletes I train. Yep. So, and just as the same token, like Phil Jackson couldn't beat Michael Jordan in a one-on-one basketball competition. You need to be the coach. You need to be the ones that tell people things that maybe they don't want to hear. You need to be the one that is the shoulder for them to lean on in the hard times. You need to be the one that is the accountability buddy and the one that improves their performance. You don't need to be the one able to perform. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit differentiation in terms of the understanding the roles of the coach versus being the performer or the athlete. But in terms of getting out of that's where I'm going to maybe like leave it at this one, because the other side of getting out of self-doubt is probably a much bigger discussion.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, cool. Next question. We all love the idea of being super productive and also living healthy lives, but I'd like to know what both of your least productive and unhealthiest guilty pleasures are.
So he said both of you guys. So why don't you start?
I'm on the hook for this.
Yeah, let's go.
Least productive and most unhealthy. That sounds like a fun day. I think that I've talked about before this concept of like the first hour and the last hour of the day. And I still really believe it. And just shorthand is just, those are the most, in my mind, the most opportunity we have to move ourselves forward for various reasons, but mostly because nobody cares about what you do in the first hour of your day and the last hour of your day. That said, I would say that the last hour of the day is still really hard for me to make a lot out of it. I tend to work out at night. So that's, 45 minutes. And then if I'm really good, I can spend like 30 minutes reading. Or if I'm really not, it's 30 minutes of Netflix. And the unhealthy part, which is we can debate the unhealthiness of Netflix. But the guilty pleasure part of it is I usually do that with a bowl of cereal.
Oh, nice.
And that tends to be my like least productive and guiltiest pleasure, all in a 30-minute chunk.
You started off with such like holier than thou, and I love that you went to Netflix and cereal.
Netflix and
you
cereal.
finished it well.
Yeah.
Okay, so mine probably has to do with, so my guilty pleasures food wise, like I love barbecue chicken pizza. I love ribs.
Yep.
I love granola. Like a parfait to me is like the best thing ever. Like when I travel, that's like my quote breakfast, but I usually don't eat breakfast when I travel. It's yogurt, granola, berries, and whatever else. But if I was to say what is the guiltiest, least productive thing that I do on a regular basis, it would be Instagram. We talk about how devastating it is, how bad it is, how addictive it is. And yeah, like case 101 right here. Like it's got me. And if I find myself not being mindful of my time, that's usually what I'm doing.
Yeah. I concur with that. All right, next question. I've got 2 daughters, 12 and 19. My youngest has anorexia and was in the hospital for a month between December and January of this year. This has obviously rocked my family's world and changed our lives. Every bit of food has to be prompted and encouraged. She has rage and fear, which she cannot control. I'm struggling to see how this situation is something good that I can be thankful for and grow from. I respect everything you and Ben do and strive every day to be more calm and think longer term, but I struggle. Just curious on your thoughts on shifting my perspective while my family is in this very difficult place.
Wow. Well, you can't. So this is what's hard, and this is what's hard with like the positive thinking. Try to find perspective. There's going to be a silver lining. There's an upside to this. Yep. When you're in it, you can't, and you're not supposed to. If you're a prisoner of war being tortured, it's really hard to find the purpose in that. You know, if you read about Viktor Frankl's stuff, like he's finding it, and but man, is that hard. Like, man, is that, if I was in that situation, I would probably be right there with this guy thinking the same exact things. Like, what's the upside of having a sick child? Yep. So I can only share with you, because I haven't been in that situation, but I can share with you like the way that Cole, one of my athletes that I'm very close with, his perspective on it. His is, if this was to happen to somebody, and it's going to, I'm glad this is happening to me. So Cole had a very, very sick child on the verge of death for months and months, literally tubes, incubated, and his perspective through the whole thing was, we can handle this. Mm-hmm. And this is going to happen to somebody. I'm glad it's happening to me. That's one perspective. The other is the Viktor Frankl's perspective, which is, on the other side of this, I will have a greater knowledge. I will have a greater understanding. I will have a greater appreciation. I will have a greater perspective of life in general. And I will have, be able to navigate life in a more meaningful way. Mm-hmm. The other way is to think about like how much you'll be able to just relate to other people, that you have a superpower essentially that other people don't have, which is the ability to understand people that are going through really difficult times like this. So it's not to make it lighter or make it positive in the moment, because I would never ask anyone to, I wouldn't want to do that. Right. Like, you're experiencing real hardship. This is a real thing. It's reality. It's not, this is why realist is above the positive thinker. Mm-hmm. If you try to turn this into a positive, it's going to be fake. Right. It's not, it's a reality. This is hard. This is a massive struggle. Don't try to diminish either of those. Don't make it easy and don't pretend it's not a struggle. They are, but in the midst of that, you can find that there are upsides to hardship and to struggle. You're a more formidable human being. You can relate to more people. There is your relationship with your wife could become stronger because of this. It's the people that have had childhood traumas themselves and they say, if you go back in time, what would you do? And they don't take away the childhood trauma because I wouldn't be who I am today without that. And I'm so grateful for who I am today. So on the other side of this, there can be upside. It's the same type of thing with parents who lose a child, like worst thing ever. Like I can't imagine it. But while you can't spin it positive, there can be greater levels of understanding, greater levels of compassion, greater levels of empathy, greater levels of connection, greater levels of your place in this universe, greater places of what does the universe mean in terms of not just me as this being walking through this, but the connection to a greater something else that you can't get without a hardship like that.
Yeah. I think all that's spot on. The only other thing I would add to it, or that I would, again, as best we can empathize with it, is to look for and to celebrate as many tiny victories as humanly possible. Because I think that's how you get through something like that you're not going to get through it today, right? It's not over yet. But if you can get one victory and then you can really like savor that and sink your teeth into it and really celebrate it and talk about it, I think that's how we generally, when we're going through something difficult and that difficulty doesn't have a clear like a clear end date. Like it's a hard workout. Well, we know the workout's going to end soon. So like it's
right.
But if it's like, oh, this is just going to be hard for a while and I don't know when that's going to end. I think the only way to get through that is to start looking for reasons to celebrate it, even if it's just tiny, even if it's just momentary.
Yeah, that's the hard part about that. Like the not knowing when it ends is probably the hardest thing.
100%.
The human beings crave certainty.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. Like a human being would rather wait for 8 minutes for a train that knowing it's showing up in 8 minutes than wait 2 minutes for a train, but you don't know when it's coming. That 2 minutes is more agonizing than the 8, 10, or 20 minutes knowing when it's coming.
Yeah.
We love the certainty, and not knowing when this is going to end is the hardest part of that whole deal.
All right. So we feel for you and hopefully it all works out. Next question. I've heard Ben mention that if money was no object, he'd choose bodywork over a personal chef. We did an episode about that years ago. But what type of bodywork would he choose? What is best for general recovery and mobility? There's lots of practices out there and it's hard to know which to pick.
I would, super specific, TB12. We have we're lucky enough. So Tom Brady's, brand. Part of his brand is he has these centers called TB12 centers, and they have bodywork coaches that are basically a cross between deep tissue massage, ART, they call it pliability, chiro without the snap and crack. But it's insane. Like we have a bodywork coach in our gym and it's like voodoo magic. It's awesome.
So is it what it is?
So it's like a deep tissue massage, but they'll find that spot that's tough, and then they'll work it through a full range of motion, quickly contracting, relaxing the muscle. And when you get done, it's a game changer. It really does move the needle.
Interesting. And so is it something that they've like taken 3 or 4 different schools and put it into this new kind of package? Or is it something that like, okay, well, there's no TB12 near me, but I can get that somewhere else?
Yeah. So it's basically like if you can't get TB12 around you, I would search for, it's like a combination of like Thai massage, which is where they like walk on your back type thing. So like a really deep tissue sports massage, ART, so active release technique, which is used by chiropractors, and like a physical therapy.
Yeah.
It's kind of a combination of all those.
Interesting. Okay, cool. All right, next question. Historically, in physical education, we test the 5 components of fitness, which are as follows: cardiovascular endurance with a pacer test, like a beep test; muscular strength, which is a push-up test until failure; muscular endurance, which is a sit-up test until failure; flexibility with a sit and reach test; and body composition with BMI. My question is there a better test for each of these components of fitness? Should we be testing more components of fitness, including the skills? And how does age play a factor? So big question.
So 3 questions.
Yeah, big.
Okay. So give me the first question again.
Yeah. Question is better test for each one of these components of
so each of those tests. So give me the first one. Is
cardiovascular endurance.
Yeah, I think that's I think the beep test is awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. So beep test, 1 mile test. But for this environment, you can get done really quickly. The beep test is awesome.
Okay. Cool. Muscular strength, which they do as a push-up test until failure.
Terrible test.
Terrible?
It's not testing muscular strength at all. It's testing muscular endurance known as stamina. So that's what they're testing there. Push-up has very little to do with strength. Much better test would be for a total body, would be like a 1 rep max thruster, like lower body, upper body through the midline. And strength is the ability to move maximal external loads. So you moving your body weight is relative strength. Yeah. So that's already we're missing it.
Yep.
And then for reps, it's repetition, it's stamina, and endurance, it's not strength. So it's a miss.
And this kind of goes to the last question here, which is, age. But if this was, which I'm assuming if this physical education, 5 components, at least as I remember them, this is like, these are kids in gym class to a large degree.
Yep.
Do they pick push-ups because I can't go get everybody to do a thruster now? So this is the closest thing we can get to strength. If that's the case, is there something that you could do with an external object that you would think that any kid could do and use it as a test?
Yeah, let's have every gym class could have this and they could do it. I would think let's get a series of weighted balls from go up every 20 pounds from 20, 40, 60, 80, all the way up to 300 pounds. And you got to put the ball over your shoulder.
Got it.
Total body strength.
Okay.
Moving
an external
loads
load is the key.
Yes.
Got it. You spoke to this a little bit.
Maximal external loads.
Yep.
Not over and over and over again.
Right. That makes sense. Muscular endurance with a sit-up test. You kind of hinted at it.
Yeah. So they're getting at it. It's just like, but it's not really a very good sit-ups is not a good test. What would be better for, what was the category again? Stamina?
Muscular endurance.
Muscular endurance, stamina, same thing. Better push-ups.
Yep.
A push-up and an air squat test would actually be better, but what maybe even better than that would be something like let's leave it at a push-up, a pull-up, push-up, pull-up, squat type thing. Sit-ups isn't terrible. But the idea behind that is repetitive.
Yep. So something like a Cindy or like in that sort of,
but you
kind of like that.
Yes, but you don't want to turn to work capacity.
Right.
You don't want to turn metabolic.
Right.
That's why a push-up test actually is pretty good. The limitation of a push-up test is you're just using upper body pushing and a little bit of core stamina. Honestly, sit-ups not terrible, but they're in the category.
Would you do something like, just in that scenario you laid out with the medicine balls, right? Would you do like, okay, pick the 20 and as many shoulders? Yeah,
the problem is it's going to turn really metabolic. So it's going to be instead of a test of muscular endurance, it's going to turn into a test of
actual
cardiovascular, respiratory capacity, which is to answer the second question. Yes, is there better tests? Yes, there are.
Okay.
But for these categories.
Flexibility with the sit and reach test.
Okay, but you're just testing hamstrings and low back.
Yep.
I think that the best one would be the capability of an overhead squat. Yep. So with an empty barbell, how close can you get your hands while you get yourself below parallel? Yep. So hands out, and almost anyone can do it with their hands or PVC pipe. Yep. But you can't touch a wall in front of you type thing. So let's use the empty barbell though. If you have your hands collar to collar, Most people can get themselves pretty darn close to parallel. As the hands come in, everyone knows what happens. The barbell starts to fall forward and you can't sustain it. So it's a phenomenal test of the key movements and the better functional movement patterns, like sit and reach. Like how many times do you sit on the ground with your legs completely straight and try to reach for something over your toes? I can't remember any time that I've done that. So people go, oh no, it's the equivalent of reaching down and picking something off the ground, like you dropped your pencil. Okay, but even that's like, it's not, you're going to bend your knees to that. That's not a functional movement pattern. We don't do that.
Yeah.
A better functional movement pattern is a squat and the full range of motion of the shoulder. So you are getting your ankles. You have any one of these things missing and you're going to get dinged on it. Your ankles, your hips, and your shoulders, which are the three big kind of like ball and sockety joints that the joint doesn't, it's not a hinge like the elbow. Even the wrist is a little bit that, and it involves the wrist even. So what we really want to test is the ones that move in all the directions: ankles, hips, and shoulders and wrists. Not so much knees, low back, or elbows. Those aren't the flexible
Is
ones.
flexibility itself worth testing, in
Yes,
this
it
kind
is.
of 5? Okay.
Yes,
So you
it
would still
is.
keep that. You would
Yep.
just change the test.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Last one is body composition with a BMI.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, BMI. If somebody is sedentary, it matters because it's all BMI is your height to weight ratio. So if you're sedentary, it's basically what it's saying is this is how fat you are. But if you have muscle, it's going to equate muscle. It's going to count muscle as fat. So if you're Chandler Smith, who's 5'8" and 200 pounds of chiseled muscle, his BMI is going to show that he's grossly obese. He doesn't have any fat on him at all. I mean, his skin is like paper thin. He's so lean. So a much better one would be a body fat test. If we're trying to test body comp, to get to the last one though, it's not a good test.
Got it.
We don't need it.
Okay. So we spent a lot of time in there. The only one that maybe is worth kind of hitting on is the age. Does that play a factor in these, what we've talked about? Is that?
Nope, not in terms of the test, but in terms of the results it would. So obviously if you're 22,
Right.
you should be able to do more push-ups, lift more weight, run faster than you could if you were 82.
Got it. Okay. This is the next question. What should a deload week look like?
Okay, so there's probably this is probably a better question than people would think it is, just because there's a deload means different things to different people. So I think in the CrossFit space, when people hear deload, they think of like lighter loads, lighter intensity, lighter volumes. It's a chance to recover. But in Chinese weightlifting, that's the week that they go for their PRs.
Interesting.
So it matters in terms of like what we're talking about when we say a deload week. They bring down the movement, the number of movements they do, the volume, the reps, but the intensity goes up. This is where they try to hit some of their heavier weights. They're literally deloading the amounts, but they're getting higher peaks in terms of intensity. So in the CrossFit space, I wouldn't want to necessarily do that because our whole thing is kind of predicated on intensity. If we bring the intensity up, man, we're going to get smashed. Yeah. So I'll answer this the way I think the question was intended, which is how do I bring down my overall workload in a week? And that would be for a CrossFit competitor. It would be a matter of bringing all three of those variables down. It is intensity, volume, and load. So you're going to do less reps, less weights with less intensity. And that is different than a recovery week. Because a recovery week is what we do. Just like you taper for an event, you also recover after an event. Recovery can take a few different shapes as well, but for most athletes, it's next to zero. They do nothing. So the deload could be some combination of that. Some athletes do better with complete time away, where they spend 3 days doing nothing during a deload week. So we've done this as well for some deloads. So if they take 1 day off on a Thursday and a Sunday. Maybe you put a back-to-back recovery day, back-to-back, sorry, like nothing day. And that's the deload. And the rest of the week stays the same. The honest answer is that there's so many different permutations and variables and ways to do it that are specific to the athlete. It's kind of like asking, what's the appropriate training week look like?
Right.
I can't.
It depends.
Yeah, I just can't do that on a macro scale. I can just give some examples.
And for folks who would consider a deload, is it something that you would only kind of prescribe in whatever form you would prescribe it for an athlete who's kind of in that sort of mentality and sort of training versus, you know, Sally over at the gym? She's like, do I need to do a deload week? Does she need to when your athletes do, or is it like everybody could use a deload type week?
That's an awesome question. With all life's normal variables holding constant, you should not need a deload week as a everyday complete performance type athlete. As an elite athlete, you would want to do that because you're doing these kind of undulating, trying to increase the workloads for a set time that you're going to peak. But that's a great question. I would not prescribe deload weeks for normal people unless those variables get out of whack, get out of skew. And then it's not scheduled. You just have to recognize that it's time.
Got it.
You have a young baby and all of a sudden you don't sleep for 4 nights in a row. Dude, like take the next day off the gym. Like that's okay.
Got it. Cool. Next question. I struggle to get my 11-year-old to be self-motivated to work out, push-ups, sit-ups, body weight squats, etc. Both my wife and I are active. My wife does Peloton and runs, and I strength train and do a bunch of Metcons every week.
What's the question?
I struggle to get my 11-year-old self-motivated. I guess the question is,
okay. How do I
get my 11-year-old self-motivated to work out?
Well, why is this person asking this not doing Peloton with his wife? Why is she not doing the Metcons with him? What do you think about that? Why are they not doing that?
Probably because they don't want to.
Yeah, right. They don't want to. So you're trying to get somebody to do something that they don't want to do. Find things that they want to do.
Yep.
So is that playing ultimate frisbee? And that's your exercise. Is that hiking in the woods? Is that building a treehouse in the backyard? Is that riding bikes? Is that swimming out to go to the big raft? What is the thing that what you're doing is you're trying to put a round peg in a square hole, and you're always going to struggle, always, until you can kind of get the person just active in general, doing the things that they want to do. Do they like playing soccer? Join a soccer team, and then if they like soccer, then okay, let's do a couple extra sprints afterwards. And if they like that, okay, maybe we throw in a couple and you have to kind of you don't just go from 0 to 1,000. You don't just go from I'm doing nothing to now we're going to do push-ups every night, son. That doesn't happen that way. You got to get them excited about it. And the way you get them excited about it is doing things that they're excited about.
Love that. Cool. Next question. I just opened my affiliate. I took over an old affiliate in January and rebranded. I'm only 22 and still a senior in college. I'm stoked to have this opportunity, but it has been really hard to balance taking care of myself, school, running the business, and fulfilling my other coaching roles. I volunteer coach high school softball, soccer, and will probably be the head coach in the next couple of years. My question would be, what are your main pieces of advice to make sure that I take care of myself while making sure everything that needs to get done gets done? I know if I don't take care of myself, I won't be able to lead others in the way I want to, but it has been difficult trying to balance how to do so.
He also writes really long questions.
Yes, I think it's a she.
Or she asks really long questions.
And she's a stud. So.
Yeah, but go get her.
Yeah.
But go get her.
Maybe gone and got too much.
You have to learn to say no to some things. Yeah. You cannot be a full-time student, be a CrossFit coach, run a CrossFit affiliate, also be a full-time softball coach, and also take care of yourself and you got too much on your plate. Yeah. I understand you want to do all these things. All those things are amazing. Yeah. I would say note, I can't choose for you which ones are yeses and nos, but you can't do it all and take care of yourself the way that you want to, and the way that you have the awareness that you should. And you're right. You have to put on, in case of emergency and the air bags fall from the ceiling in the plane, you have to put the airbag over yourself before you put it over somebody else. You have to take care of yourself first. You want to take care of other people. You can't fill from an empty cup. the way you're riding, your cup is spilling out all over the place.
Yeah.
And you have this awareness that you realize you're not gonna be able to take care of yourself. The short answer is you have to figure out and prioritize and say no to things. Then from there, one of those things has to go. I don't know which one it is, but one of those things has to go. You're not gonna be able to do all those things. Then from there, it's creating really hard boundaries. When it's my time to work out, I am working out. I'm not running the business. I'm not trying to think about my schoolwork. I'm not trying to do these other projects. Don't come over and overload it. It's I am working out. When I'm at home, I am building relationships at home. When I am working on the business, I am not thinking about school. It's like you have to go
Single task
completely. And this took me an incredibly long time to figure out. And it's the life hack. The life hack is really, really, really strong boundaries. When I talk to new aspiring entrepreneurs, this is the thing I recommend. And this is the thing I talk about with my team when I talk to them. We want a healthy, calm work environment. The way you do that is by when you go home, you should not open your computer. I know you're so passionate about your job. I know you want to get the work done. You should not open your computer when you go home or on the weekends. Like you need to. You're busting your ass when you're here. You should not be doing that for the sustainable, because we've had people burn out. And I've seen it happen where they love what they're doing. They're so passionate, and 8 years later, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone. And that's a terrible place to be. So the really hard boundaries, and they're hard to put in because you're passionate. And it's harder to do things that, like for me, it was when I had a young family and I had the business first. And my business was my jam, my thing, and my 24/7.
Yep.
And when the young family came in, when I was with my family, I wanted to be with the business. It took me a long time to figure it out.
Yeah, we should have a conversation with that, because I totally agree. I think the one thing that I would maybe add to the top of that, and just kind of concurring with what you're saying, and just maybe add a little bit of tactic to it, which is something that the writer Cal Newport calls fixed schedule productivity. The idea being, look at your calendar and say, okay, everything that I've got on my plate, every obligation, every I've got classes, both in the gym, where does that live on your calendar? You have a fixed amount of time every single day. And so if you sit down and you say, okay, well, I got 3 classes and I've got to study at least an hour every week for each one of those. Okay, that's 6 hours. When does that happen? Okay, cool. What's next? Yes. Okay, I coach 2 classes at the gym and I have okay, cool. What's next? And what happens is you quickly realize that you said yes to literally more than you can do. It's not, I get it, I've been there, but until you actually sit down and say, oh, what have I said yes to? Oh, that's more than I can physically do. That's when you can start to actually make tactical decisions about, okay, well, if I have to get rid of one of these, what is that going to look like? And what does that open up for my calendar?
Love that. So what I've done with that is exactly that. And there's, try to create buffers in between and a few white spaces with nothing. Yep. And then when somebody wants to take on a meeting or something else pops up, I know if I say yes, even if they say, okay, I was supposed to study at that time, but I don't just delete that study and put in new meeting. I have to be able to move the study into a white space. Right. And if I can't move into a white space, now the answer is no. Yep. And it truly allows you to figure out how much you can't overfill the cup.
Exactly.
You start to spill.
Yep. It's so easy to say yes. And then but because yes, sure. Sure. Why not? That sounds awesome. And then it's like, well, where and when and how?
I love it. Where you said, I have 3 classes a day and I need to study that. Yeah. That's
and then put your workouts in. Like, what's one thing that entrepreneurs suck at is like, okay, you take care of yourself. That's 5 hours a week, right? Whatever, 6 hours, 3 hours. Okay, now what? Keep going, right? And you want to be home at a certain time. You want to put your kids down. Okay, well that means 6 o'clock on is off, right? And so you start to build backwards from possible, and then you've got to start making hard decisions about, well, what's got to go because I can't come up with more hours. So, okay, cool. But kudos to you. And at 22, now's the time to make those kinds of mistakes, I would say.
Rather have you be doing what you're doing than the opposite. Have experiences. So
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. In our program, we have a monthly challenge, and this month's was 165-pound thrusters for time with 5 strict burpees at the top of every minute. I found myself getting super gassed like 8 or 9 minutes in, and it took me about 19 minutes or so to complete. The scores overall ranged from about 7 to 8 minutes to 25 to 30 minutes. What is the best way for me to train for conditioning workouts like this? I can run 4 miles in under 30 minutes, so it's not like I'm out of shape. Would you say that just adding more Metcon workouts every week or a few times a week is how I could work on that?
That is a gnarly test.
Yeah.
It's a takeoff of Kalzu.
Okay, there's also an
So
Air
Kalzu,
Force. Isn't that like an Air Force?
so Air Force was a bunch of different movements, and every
Is that what it
5
was?
minutes,
Okay, I
every
remember
minute
doing
on the
that
minute
once
you
and
did something.
being miserable. But
Yeah, that's the same format.
Same
It's like you
general.
try to outrun it.
Yeah.
Kalsu is 100 thrusters at 135. Every minute on the minute, you do 5 burpees.
Yep, okay.
For most human beings, there are times that you don't do anything. There's minutes where it's just like nothing happens. That's the normal
you get
human
some
being.
water.
Yeah. Way over programmed for most human beings. This is a takeoff of the same test, and it's gnarly. Okay, so the question is again, it's
How do you train for a workout like that so that you can kind of
and one
perform
of the
that
suggestions was, do I just do more Metcon?
Yeah, just more Metcon.
Yeah, that to me would be the easy answer. You increasing your running capacity is just going to be increasing your running capacity at a certain point. And then you have to start to get into this different type of modality, which is this high intensity exercise work capacity world, which is very different when you're exerting against an external load versus just running and using this monostructural environment of cardiovascular capacity or aerobic capacity. So the easy answer is, yeah, more Metcons. Do more Metcons with box jumps and with rowing and with assault bike and with wall balls and with pull-ups and all that stuff. If you wanted to sport specifically, if you want to gain, like truly train for this event,
win this event.
Yeah, right, exactly. Next time it comes up in your gym, you want to win this thing. Then what you do is you break this thing down into its component parts and try to overload it through intervals. So the way you do it is essentially it took this person 16 minutes or so. Is that what you said?
8 to 9 minutes.
8 to 9 minutes.
Oh, no,
is when you
sorry,
get
19
hard.
minutes. 19 minutes is what he
Okay, so 20 minutes.
Yep.
So you want to do more than 20 minutes. So what you're going to do is do 6 4-minute sections. That's 24 minutes with a 4-minute break in between. Now what you've done is you've gotten your body used to doing more than this work, but you're able to do this work even faster than you were before. The faster isn't the key though. So what you could do is actually set up your target time. So this person says, now I want to be able to do this in 12 minutes. Okay. Do this in 12 minutes. Let's do 10 because 10 is really easy. 10, 100 means that you got to get 10 thrusters in every minute. Okay. So now we know how to do this, 10 thrusters every minute. So we're going to find our sustainable pace. We're going to hold 10 thrusters every minute for 3 minutes. Okay. Take a break for 3, 4, 5 minutes and do it again for 3, 4, 5, and then take a big break and then do it again until you've gotten up to 100, 120, 150 reps. Now what you've done is you built in the stamina and the capacity and the ability to recover instead of just doing this workout, which would get you this terrible, terrible, terrible place at minute 8 like you did, and you're in survival mode for another 10 minutes. That's not the way to get better at it. So break it down, figure out the goal pace. What can you hold that goal pace for? Stop, rest, recover, do it again. Stop, rest, recover, do it again.
Love that. Okay, cool. We got 2 more questions. We have the opportunity to buy another box. The problem is that the current owner has multiple classes: CrossFit, yoga, gymnastics, weightlifting, endurance. The problem here is that we only want to do CrossFit classes. How can we make the impact smaller on the old members? And again, how can we educate the community towards the CrossFit approach?
Okay, Mr. Functional Branding. This is a good question. You probably get this question a lot. I'd love to hear your take on this.
I actually, one of the things I think about is what is in a previous episode, we talked about when you come in, when a new owner comes in, like that's your biggest opportunity to make the change. And so that would be the same thing as assuming it's not too late to kind of take this opportunity. If I knew somebody was going in and they're going to buy the gym and okay, we want to do all these changes, I would pick the date and I would say, I would have meeting, I'd film it, I'd write it, I'd make sure everybody understood why we were doing this. So that's the first thing, is take the opportunity of new ownership to make a really big change, and recognize that some people are going to be bummed, but probably not that bummed. They'll make more noise initially than they probably really care about. So that on that end, I would do that. I think I'm interested in your answer to the how do we start to educate the members on why we're doing this. That I have opinions, of course, but you obviously have been in that position before. But on a brand perspective, I would say that that's the time to do it.
Yeah, I love that.
New owners, as you say, paint the wall, paint the wall. Let them know new things are here. And then for everything after that, obviously you're better to answer the question about how do we actually communicate the reasons why, not just what we're doing, but the reasons why.
Well, what I loved in your answer there was you laid out some of the how to communicate, which was have a meeting, film it, write it. So what you're saying is don't just post that set the new schedule, which is what I think a lot of affiliate owners might do is like, here's the new schedule, and there's all just CrossFit classes. And now people are up in arms.
Yeah, that's it's funny because it's like you didn't make that promise. You didn't make the promise that the old owners did that you get to do weightlifting but you still get to break the promise.
Yeah.
You're still the person who's there to break it. So you want to break it, but you've got to recognize that that's what you're doing. You are breaking a promise. And so there are ways to break promises more effectively than not.
Yeah. And then for the why, like why are you choosing to do CrossFit instead of all these other things? That's going to be unique to this person. So I can give some of the reasons why somebody might do that, which is we don't want to have a fragmented community. Yeah. We want everyone together doing the same thing. We want this shared suffering that will pull people together. We want we're creating a family that does things together. If we have a family and Susie's playing soccer and Billy's playing lacrosse and Johnny's making music, all at the same time, we never see each other. Yeah. So what we want to do is find something that we all can do together. So that's one reason. Yeah. Next one is we believe in it. Yeah. We believe this is the greatest path to health, fitness, and performance that's ever been created. Another is that simplicity. Like we want to create world-class coaching. It's very hard to get world-class coaching across 5 different modalities. We want to do it in one. Another is, and so you just kind of like, what is it for you, the way that you want to talk about it? Another way is like us as owners, you do what you're passionate, thing. You should be the top customer of your own business. We were just talking about this before we started recording. You have to be a customer of your business. And if you have powerlifting and kettlebell club and running and endurance and spin class, but you only do CrossFit, you're not a customer of your business. You should be doing the whole deal.
I don't think any chef would open a restaurant and make food that they didn't themselves enjoy making and eating.
Right, exactly.
Yep. That's interesting. I think the other thing, I think that, what kind of embedded in what you were saying to work really hard to figure out is to how to communicate it, not so that it's about you as the owner, but communicate why we're making these changes for the membership. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and you alluded to it with like, we believe CrossFit is the most effective means, blah, 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 blah. That's starting to put them in, putting them in the seat of kind of the hero, right? If you talk about that hero's journey, we believe that this is the best way to get you from where you are today to where you want to go, and not, oh, we just really love CrossFit. Yeah. That's about you. It doesn't really at the end of the day matter to them if you just really love CrossFit. So you've got to be able to articulate why this one thing can do the job that 6 things were apparently doing before that. So that's the other thing. All right. Last question we've got. Ben, you've spoken before about the development of young athletes and the benefits of diversity in sport exposure and not being too sport specific too early. Generally speaking, athletes have a shelf life for performance. Again, generally speaking, do you think that by pursuing the elite level earlier, athletes like Paige Powers, Mal O'Brien, or Emma Carey have extended their potential shelf life? Or do you think that the early start may lead to an early decline in performance?
Okay, so I'll answer that first question, then go back a little bit. I believe that they've extended it. Mm-hmm. So yes, they are amongst the top 20 in the world as teenagers. So to me, I don't think that means I don't think that there's a 6-year competitive window and now they're going to be gone when they're 24.
Like no matter when you start that 6 years.
Yeah, exactly. I believe that it's still the same thing, that you can be competitive into your very early 30s. 31, 32, people are super competitive. 34 is definitely where the drop happens. 35 is really hard to be there. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is, I think, just a misunderstanding of what I mean by diversifying sports at a young age. Yep. When you're 14, 15, 16, I'm okay for you to start going towards your thing.
Yep.
But Mal O'Brien was a competitive gymnast before she was a CrossFitter. She wasn't a competitive CrossFitter before she was a CrossFitter. So what I'm saying is, don't go at age 4 towards your thing. What I'm saying is, have the repertoire in your early developmental years. After you cross puberty, yeah, you have a hard time cracking into the NHL if you're only playing hockey, in the winter season of your senior year of high school.
Yeah,
you gotta that. There's a time to specify. That time is not at age 7. At age 7, you should be playing basketball and soccer and swimming and gymnastics and getting some exposure to weightlifting and CrossFit and running track and cross country. And that's where you want to get as much exposure as you can. And then think of it like the pyramid. Yep. As you get closer and closer towards 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, by 18, if you want to crack into the top echelons, everyone knows that you have to already be a sports-specific athlete by that time, unless you're Bo Jackson.
Right. Do you think that the question or the question mark on this, at least for this sport, is that the sport is relatively young enough that, like, for many years, you're a great CrossFitter, but it wasn't around at 18, so that wasn't a choice. And so all these athletes just kind of, oh, you're just really good at CrossFit now, and you're 26, right? And so there's this misunderstanding of what it usually looks like for a sport that is more mature.
I think the misunderstanding is when people hear the word range in terms of athletic performance, they don't understand the age group that needs to happen in. Yeah. And to your point, people could be very successful following other sports. Like when we first got into this in 2008, you could find this sport from any other sport, whether it's, like Rich Froning, found it through baseball, and within 2 years was winning the games. No one's really doing that now.
Yeah, at age whatever he was, 21, 20 something, right?
So no one's really doing that now. You have to have, kind of the 3-5 year experience of CrossFit. I'm going to guess that that's going to extend even farther. But my contention, the answer to this question is, have your range, have your wide variety of sports that you participate in up until about puberty. And then at puberty, you can try to figure out what that actual thing should be.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you, everybody out there, for sending us great questions. If you want to get a question into the queue, you can find me on Instagram, PS Cummings. Drop me a DM. I'll add it to our list. We'll get to it in a future episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your ratings and your reviews. Ben and I will be back next week for another episode of Chasing Excellence. You can get every episode of Chasing Excellence wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Until next time, thank you for listening.